Welcome into the Suffering Sports Fan Podcast. I'm Adam Avin. That's my father, Roie Avin. And Dad, we are into football season now officially. The Hall of Fame game was last night. We're filming this Friday afternoon. Texans Bears last night. We got our first glimpse of football this season. I mean, were you pumped at all? And the new kickoff, exactly. I still
You know what? I almost never watch the Hall of Fame preseason game. I think it's useless because no one plays in it. But I did watch a little bit last night because I was actually curious about the kickoff. So that was kind of different and weird to see. But I'm here for it. It's fine.
Yeah, last year we were actually at the Hall of Fame in Canton. Got to go around, actually see all the busts of the legends from the 50s, 60s to present day, people that have been inducted, and got to walk by some Hall of Famers, players, and it was just such a cool experience. Obviously, we were there because Zach Thomas, Dolphins legend, one of the best linebackers in Dolphins history. There's a bobblehead you're pointing to in the back. Got inducted into the Hall of Fame after many years of debate. And so that was such a great moment. Jimmy Johnson inducting him in, and Jason Taylor, his other teammates, coaches, everybody there. And so that was a really, really exciting time. And this year, another
that was a really great weekend. Well. Yeah. Second time I had been because I went for the Marino induction, but the Hall of Fame is always awesome to go to, and it was a blast. Yeah, and I wonder if that's a topic for conversation, which would be the next Dolphin to get inducted, and I'm not sure there is one before we get to Tyreek Hill, maybe.
Right.
To be honest,
maybe Xavier Howard. I don't know if Xavier Howard's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he could get in. I think he could get in. I don't know if he's a first.
I don't think he gets in. I think he had a couple of seasons that were worthy, but I think it's a long shot. He would be the guy. He would be the guy, I guess. But I mean, Richmond Webb, I think, is deserving. Offensive lineman from the 80s.
But it's been too long. It's been longer than Zach Thomas, and Zach Thomas took a good 10 years of debate. Yeah. It took a big heap of praise from Brian Urlacher and other guys in the Hall of Fame who were like, guys, Zach Thomas was as good as us. He had better stats than me multiple seasons. Why isn't he in here?
Well, he was long deserving. That made no sense that he wasn't in. Yeah. But that's an interesting thing. I mean, I don't know. I think Tyreek Hill seems to be the obvious choice from the current era that I can think of. I don't know who else would even be up for it. So, but that's all what we're here to talk about, right?
Right. Well, you meant that's an interesting debate, an impromptu debate, I guess. And, I do think Xavier Howard is a guy that you look at who could eventually make the Hall of Fame one day. I don't know if he's first ballot, probably not. But he actually was voted amongst his peers as one year to being a top 20 player in the NFL top 100 rankings. So the players definitely respected him when he was at his peak. Right. And so that NFL top 100 list has come out over the past couple of weeks. The NFL releases these player rankings voted on by the players, excuse me. And a lot of Dolphins are on this list. I actually put out an article for dolphinstalk.com that kind of explains the list a little bit, why it's important and should be a big deal that so many Dolphin players are on the list. 8 Dolphins, which is the second most by any team in the league, on this list voted on by the players. So there is kind of that newfound respect, I guess, for this current era of this Dolphins team, that these players are like, oh, they have talent. They have players on that team that can compete, that are good enough to help this team go on a playoff or championship run. Not to mention the former Dolphins that were drafted by Chris Greer, that were coached by Mike McDaniel, that are also on the list, who are no longer on the team, like Christian Wilkins and Minkah Fitzpatrick, Laremy Tunsil, guys from a few years back. But this Dolphins team has a lot of talent. So I want to ask you, as a lifelong Dolphins fan, obviously the NFL Top 100 list is a newer thing. It's only been around for 12 years or so since they've been doing it. But it seems like the NFL makes a pretty big deal out of it. As a lifelong Dolphins fan, why do you think Dolphins fans aren't caring more about this list? Because the NFL is telling us, hey, they have good players.
I think that for many years, as you noted in your article, which was very interesting, for years we had maybe one player, sometimes 2 players. 2000, I think it was, or was it 2020, where we had 0 players.
Yeah.
So I think we're used to not really having the talent, at least over the last decade, prior maybe to the last couple of years,
Yeah.
that merit being on that list, to be honest. So I think everybody's sort of skeptical that, hey, they like our team now. That's not, we're not used to this.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think the big thing for me is that it's a list of players voted on by the players.
Right.
Nobody knows the talent in the NFL better than the guys in the league themselves. Obviously, next to the coaches and the GMs, the people who are evaluating the talent. But the guys at the top of the league know who the best players are. And I think the fact that you look at a list like a top 100, which, 100, that sounds like a lot of players. 100 players is 2 NFL teams. There's over 1,600 player. There's over 1,600 players in the league, and that's not even when you take into account practice squad players. Every team gets 14 extra guys. Emergency quarterbacks now and whatnot. Like there is probably nearly 1,800, 2,000 NFL players in the league, and the players have to vote on this list of 100. Every player gets to submit their ballot, and for there to be a pretty big consensus of nearly 10 Dolphin players in the top 100, which is 10%, almost 10% of what that list is. I mean, that's a pretty big deal considering there's 32 teams in the league. That was my whole point. And I think that's why it's kind of a new era for Dolphins fans, I think, or at least something you have to look forward to, in that, the players in the league know that the Dolphins have the talent. Now it's time for us to buy into the fact that, hopefully there is a future coming soon.
Well, and then you have, for example, I mean, Tua gets a lot of criticism in the media as not being worthy and not being good enough, and they shouldn't pay him and all that. But he was ranked 30, was it 36 on the list?
Yeah,
which is
36.
Which is not low at all. I mean, that's nothing to be shy about. And then you still had a couple of players above that. You had Jalen Ramsey, I think, at 25. We still don't know where Tyreek Hill is going to be exactly, but he's for sure in the top 10. We know that much. So. I think it's pretty cool. I think that's something that when I was younger, I remember being very excited about who made the Pro Bowl. That was just something you sort of looked forward to. So this sort of takes it to another level of that. I think it's maybe even more prestigious in a way, because like you say, it's the players that vote, not the fans, not people that are homers, not media who have a bias, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's actually it's neat.
Yeah, definitely. And Madden actually put out their rankings today as well. We're talking about the top teams now. And the Dolphins actually voted the 4th best team in the game. And I'm somebody that plays Madden a lot. I think that's a big deal as well. You think of all the players that they have.
That's shocking to me. Yeah.
It does kind of make sense, though, when you, in terms of Madden rankings, Tua as a top quarterback, Mostert, Achane, Waddle, Hill, Teron Armstead, Jalen Ramsey, Jordan Poyer, Javon Holland, like Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips. Like it makes sense. I think they have the 7th best offense in the game, though, which is a little weird to me. I think they have arguably the best offense in the league with a lot the talent. I really don't know how
Again,
it goes
that doesn't
into
make
it.
any sense.
Yeah,
okay.
all the quarterbacks that are better than Tua in the game are the teams that have better offenses in the game, basically.
Okay.
So like if you look at it like that, then I understand it. But they're the 4th best team in the game. I think that's a pretty big deal as well. So the fact that the NFL, other organizations that are related to the NFL, and I know it's a very small thing. We're talking about a video game, and we're talking about a hypothetical list of players but I think it's a big deal because it shows that this Dolphins team is in a new place. It shows that this is a team that can compete. And I know we mentioned this on the last episode. I'm pretty sure I brought this up. But since Mike McDaniel's come to the Dolphins, they've gotten better every year, right? 9-8, 11-6. We saw our schedule predictions last week. Hopefully we think that, we're going to be right on those.
Undefeated, obviously.
Right. Super Bowl,
yeah, what's funny? I mean, look, on the surface, a video game ranking seems silly, but a lot of people really look at it. The players get upset when they're not given a high ranking. They talk about it. ESPN does reveals about who's the rankings every day. There's all this stuff going on about it. So it's something to be excited about. It means nothing, but it's exciting to see that we're considered that high. I think it goes to show that the fact that I think in a game like that, in a video game setting, you want to be able to score points, be fast, have big plays, and the Dolphins are all about that. So from that perspective, it sort of checks out.
Although, and I don't know if we were planning on mentioning this today, but the NFL's always goes through rule changes every year. Obviously, we mentioned the kickoff rule, but they're changing motions, pre-snap motions, and so that's going to have a big.
That was just announced, yeah.
That's going to be a big difference for the Dolphins offense. We don't know really to the effect it'll have, because Tyreek Hill's so fast. Any sort of slight movement will throw a defense off, because you're scared of who else is going to get the ball. Right. But, what used to be was Tyreek Hill would kind of run around the snap and just kind of keep going. They'd snap the ball and there was no real stop. Now, if Tyreek is going to do a sweep motion, or any of the Dolphins players for any sort of misdirection, they actually kind of have to pause and stop and wait. And they have to look with Tua and check before he can snap the ball. So that's going to be interesting as well. I don't know how they're going to include that in Madden, but in real life, that hopefully it doesn't take too much of a toll on McDaniel's crazy plays that he'll draw up. Because that has a big effect on how we can have big plays and win games.
I think that is deliberately targeting what Dolphins did. It also affected the other teams that apparently did it a lot, like the Rams and the 49ers.
They all come from the same system too.
The innovative coaches, Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. I don't really think that's a fair thing to do. They didn't get rid of the tush push from the Eagles when everybody was accusing them of doing it. They kept that. So we'll see. I think I have enough faith in McDaniel and those guys to be able to sort of live with that and work around it. But it seems kind of shady that they're just going after that kind of thing against us. But
the Dolphins get a lot of shade in the media. I know I've said this to you privately, and I'm very vocal about Tua, and I think he's a very good quarterback. I don't think there's anybody in the league that's split more down the middle in the media, or gets portrayed so differently by different people in the media. People love Tua and they protect him. You see Louis Riddick and Dan Orlovsky and Emmanuel Acho and Robert Griffin III go on there on their networks and protect him and say, "Are you kidding? Of course he deserved a contract." And then you have guys like Chris Canty going out and saying he never should have gotten any contract, but Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence, they deserve theirs and they've done less, right? So Tua obviously sparks a lot of conversation. And with the NFL top 100 list, and that being a ranking in itself of all the players in the league, but also stacking up the different quarterbacks in the league, we thought that it'd be fun if we ranked our top quarterbacks in the league, specifically
what would a podcast be without ranking something? So let's do that. That's a lot of fun.
Specifically where Tua falls into place in the top 10.
Yeah.
So
okay, let's do it.
Yeah. So here are our rankings. I don't know if you want to go first. And then I'll follow up after. But this is
sure.
But yeah, we got our rankings here. All right. So Dolphins player rankings, and So give me a start at 1. Let's go 1 to 10.
1 to 10.
Yeah,
or
let's
10
go
to
1
1.
to 10.
We should do 10 to 1.
No, 1 to 10 because we know the top.
Because we know we know who the top are going to be. So my number really 1 is obviously. Right. Yeah, you're right. It makes sense. And I think we talked about it that our top QBs are pretty much going to be similar. Number 1 is obvious. It's Patrick Mahomes. He's the best. I'm not ready, like some people, to call him the best of all time. I think he's got many championships and many years to go before he gets there. But is he top 5 all time? Yeah, it's arguable that's already there. Number 2, Josh Allen. Look, he's a guy you love to hate. He owns the Dolphins. There's no denying that. There's nothing we can do about it until we actually beat him. I feel that this is similar to when Jim Kelly was just always beating the Dolphins back in the late 80s. You had to hope one day you were going to get over the hump and beat him. And I think this year we can. We'll see what happens. Number 3, Burrow. If not for an injury, he's probably number 2. I'll have to see how he comes back this year, but he's awesome. He's had the numbers. Right. You don't really realize how awesome he's been until you go back and look at his stats from even his rookie year. He was just putting up ridiculous numbers and, of course, got to a Super Bowl already. So he's great. Lamar Jackson, number 4, 2-time MVP, was awesome last year. I do not know what happened in the playoffs when they went completely away from what they did all season and they just choked up a big one, but they should have been in the Super Bowl. I think that's the top 4.
Yeah, these 4, my list will pop up in a little bit, but I think for the majority of football fans out there, regardless of any bias you have towards your teams, and if you are a fan of one of these top 4 quarterbacks teams, and you're lucky. But I think it's pretty objective. These are the top 4 quarterbacks in the league, and in any particular order, however you want to put it, if you want to put Burrow ahead, or if you love Lamar and you think, well, 2-time MVP, he should be up there with Mahomes or above Josh Allen. It doesn't matter. These are the best 4 quarterbacks in the league, and these are the quarterbacks. They all happen to be in the AFC, which is pretty annoying. But I think there's a strong consensus among NFL fans. These are the top guys.
Yep, agreed. So the next 6 guys, we're doing a top 10. It's sort of a mix. It's kind of really tricky to split these guys up. I'm going to go CJ Stroud at number 5. I hate to really do that just yet after only one season, but it was a pretty spectacular rookie season. Won the division, won a playoff game, broke rookie records. The numbers were amazing. Come from behind wins. Everything you want a guy to do, he did. And again, it's just one of the great seasons a QB's had, never mind a rookie. So you got to give him props for that.
I don't have any problem with that. I'm not somebody who's going to anoint a rookie quarterback after 1 year, in the top 5.
Yeah, I get that.
Top 10 is hard for me because I feel like you still have so much left to prove, and because people saw Tua come in that first year and struggle. He was still injured. He was playing against tough defenses and splitting time with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and had a coach that hated him. So Stroud came into a great situation and played spectacular, but I still think he got Stephon Diggs this year, and Joe Mixon. He could take another leap this year.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You didn't know that he came in. You didn't know that he came into a great situation. Houston was not a good team previously. They had a rookie coach. They didn't know who their wide receivers, if they were going to be all that good, Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And they were all awesome together out of nowhere. Now you add on Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon and all this. So, I mean, there's for every reason to expect they're going to be just as good, if not better. So, okay, so where does Tua rank? I have him at 6. Okay. There's a lot of pundits in the media. Obviously, we're Dolphin homers, I guess, but that have him ranked below the top 10. I just think based on stats alone, he deserves to be in the top 10. Does he have something more to prove? Absolutely. But I think it's just the easiest thing in the world to constantly only blame him for the team's flaws at the end of the season. Sure. Yeah. There were mistakes made by lots of players. There were injuries. There were lots of different things that were made. Dropped touchdown passes. The defense didn't play great. I just think it's not one guy. It's never one guy, win or lose. And he's been spectacular. So I have him at number 6, and I think I just think the numbers are going to be ridiculous this year again. 7, Jalen Hurts. I like him. I mean, 2 years ago he was amazing. Last year he was really good. The first half of the season, the wheels fell off on the Eagles. Injuries, different things happened. But I don't think he's any less of a quarterback, and I think he's going to be back. They're going to be really strong this year, I expect. Number 8, you're much higher on Matthew Stafford than I am. I think he's a very good quarterback, but I don't think he's one of the great quarterbacks to ever play and all that kind of stuff. He's if not for getting traded to the Rams, he's a Phillip Rivers guy who plays 15 years and throws for a lot of yards and touchdowns and is forgotten. Good for him that he got to the Rams on a super team and won a championship. But he did nothing for a decade other than just put up yards. But he's good. Number 8 is, I think, nothing to be upset about. Jared Goff at number 9. He's a solid quarterback. Does everything you want him to do. He's a winner. He plays great. He doesn't do anything incredible. But this is one of those guys that's always going to be there and always knows how to win. And I think that's important. Number 10, I'm going a little bit maybe above what I normally do. Jordan Love at 10, because yes, he only played really a good second half of one season, but he was awesome. That those last maybe 9 games, I think, were amazing. The numbers were ridiculous. I think it's something like 21 touchdowns and 2 picks or something, and won a ridiculous playoff game against the Cowboys on the road. Almost won the next playoff game against the Niners. So I'm not as high on Dak. I think Dak is a very solid quarterback. Herbert, I think, is overrated. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is truly overrated. And who else were we considering on this list? Aaron Rodgers, coming off an Achilles, hasn't been good for maybe 2-3 years. Years ago, he's number 1 or 2 on this list, easy, one of the all-time best.
Yeah.
But I don't think he makes the top 10. So there you go.
Okay. Brock Purdy also you left off as well, another guy.
Correct.
All right, so we got Jordan Love at 10. So that rounds out your top 10. You have 2 at 6. So I think we're going to see a lot of similarities here, I think, at the top of our list. So we'll go straight into mine. And number 1 is obviously Patrick Mahomes. Best quarterback in the league. If you have him at anywhere else, you're wrong. He's number 1. And there's nothing really else to say about that. He loses Tyreek Hill. He wins the Super Bowl. I mean, just come on, man. Number 2, it's going to be Josh Allen. I mentioned it last time we were on, but he's a different beast when he plays against Miami. This is just from a ranking of personally with my own eyes watching him play. Even when he looks like he's about to make a wrong play, he makes a spectacular one. And that's not to say he makes a lot of really dumb plays, but I've seen him save the day too many times that I have a hard time putting him at anywhere else. Now, if there was somebody who I would put at number 2, it'd be the guy I have at 3, Joe Burrow, because I think they're interchangeable. I really do. And someone actually asked me the other day. They said, they asked me my top 5 quarterbacks randomly, separate conversation before I made this list in my head, and we actually planned this segment out. And I gave them my top 5, and I said number 3, Joe Burrow. They said, why do you put Joe Burrow on the top? He's been injured. He yes, he made it to the Super Bowl, but he really had one full good season. He hasn't done enough. And I said, well, he's just consistent. Like when he plays and when he's healthy, he doesn't play bad. Like you remember the start of last year before the injury, it seemed like everything else was going wrong, not him. And he was dealing with that injury, that foot thing. He was trying to come back. But even then, he was making some spectacular throws. He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. Yes, he makes spectacular plays, but not like Josh Allen, where you feel like he has to run around and throw a ball up, and then it gets picked off and tipped, and he eventually saves the day. It's like, no, he's just good. Like, he's just a great quarterback. He's a good pocket quarterback that can use his legs if he needs to. And so I have Joe Burrow at 3. Number 4, I got Lamar Jackson. Lamar, 2-time MVP. You mentioned it. I've had him in fantasy multiple times. He's destroyed the Dolphins over the years. Him and Tua actually have had some good battles over the past couple of seasons. Now that both of them are, the starting quarterbacks for their teams. And I don't know. I love Lamar Jackson. And I know there's a lot of people say he's just a running back playing quarterback. He doesn't have a great arm, but I've seen him make some throws. And I hope that this year
he's awesome.
He used his arm a little bit more. I mean, he's a great quarterback. And yes, he's fast. He's the best running quarterback we have ever seen. That first full year as a starter, I drafted him in, I think, the 15th round in fantasy. He became my starting quarterback and led me to the playoffs. And so he was great. And just something like we've never seen. So our top 4 is not pretty much. It's exactly the same.
Exactly.
And so now is where things get a little different. And you foreshadowed it in your list, but number 5 for me is Matthew Stafford. I think he's just awesome. He's not a great fantasy quarterback. And I look at a lot of like my rankings and things through the lens of fantasy football a little bit, because I spend a lot of time watching every game. I sit down on Sunday, and when I have the Dolphin game on the TV, I have Red Zone, and I'm paying attention to a lot of things. But specifically when I have players that I drafted or players on my team or on multiple of my teams, I'm paying attention and I'm watching closely at those games because I want to see what's going on. And I had Cooper Kupp a couple of years ago. I had Puka Nacua this past year, and I won my championship, by the way. And watching Matthew Stafford closely, he makes these throws specifically with a game on the line right at the end where I'm like, I don't even understand how with the pressure, with the weight on your shoulders, Yes, he has great wide receivers
that can
get open, but you got to lead them open. I mean, to me, Matthew Stafford is spectacular. I have him at 5. He blows my mind every time I watch him play. Seriously. And yes, he does throw a lot of interceptions, but that's because he's aggressive and he takes shots down the field. And honestly, I don't really have a problem with that. But when he throws a touchdown, I mean, man, he throws a touchdown and he puts it in the right spot. So I have him at number 5. And I think I'm probably a little bit higher than the consensus of people, but I really like Matthew Stafford's playing style. And number 6 for me, I also have 2 at 6, actually. I think here is where the ranking starts to get blurred for me a little bit. It's a mix of guys who I feel like have proven themselves, but still kind of get disrespected a little bit. I think there's a lot of guys coming up, and honestly, you can include Matthew Stafford in that list of guys who I feel like have proven themselves but still get disrespected. There are guys who year after year played great. Yes, they might not win the game late in the playoffs when it counts, but are they putting up, 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, 10 or so picks? Like, they're having really good seasons and leading their offenses year after year, at least since they've become the solidified starter for their teams. And they all have different situations, obviously, but I feel like, we could talk about Tua all day. I don't need to go into it over and over and over again. But I think he's proven himself in the 2 years he's had Mike McDaniel, since he's felt believed in, and since he's had the weapons around him. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that always ticks me off is he's only good because he has Tyreek. He's only good because he has Waddle and Mostert, H, and all these guys. They're building the team around him. Tyreek Hill needs somebody to throw him the ball, just like Mahomes got to throw to Tyreek and still throws to Kelsey, right? Just like Burrow, they drafted Jamar Chase for him, his college teammate, so that there was a connection there. Lamar Jackson has Mark Andrews. Stafford has Cooper Kupp.
Listen, the only guy throwing to no one is Mahomes. Everyone else has people. So let's see what Allen does without Stephon Diggs and Gabe, whatever his name was, the other guy. Yeah.
Well, either way, my point is every wide receiver needs a good quarterback to lead them and to throw the ball just like how they want it. And the word out of the mouths of all the receivers who have caught a pass from Tua is that he throws the best, most accurate ball they've ever caught as a wide receiver. Tua leads them like no other. He puts the ball in places where they can get it easiest. He needs to win in the cold. That's the only thing. Win a game in the cold, it shuts everybody up. The goalposts get moved for him every single year. He's at 6.
Now it's win the Super Bowl in the cold. That's always going to be something.
Right. So that's my number 6. Number 7, I have Jalen Hurts. I think you have him at 7 as well. I like Jalen Hurts. I think a lot of his value over the past couple of seasons has become diminished purely off of the fact that they're like, oh, they just do a tush push and he gets all these touchdowns. And so his numbers might be a little bit inflated, or his passing numbers, actually, he's not getting as many touchdowns because of how many, 1-yard rushes he's getting into the end zone. But he's still a very good quarterback that makes throws when you need him. He can throw down the field. I think that was a big complaint that people had. Can he, actually coming into the league, is he going to be able to throw accurately? He has an arm, but can he throw down the field with pinpoint accuracy? And he hits A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith all the time. He knows how to put the ball down the middle of the field. And I think people overlook him a little bit. But I think this quarterback is more overlooked than anybody, and I think it's Dak. He had over 4,000 yards last year. He does it pretty much every year. The Cowboys are at the top of the league every year during the regular season. The past few years have been the best years the Cowboys have had, specifically on offense since the Aikman years. Again, just like Tua, have to go and win that game. Hurts, been to a Super Bowl, got to end the game good. And they were in that Super Bowl. So these are all guys that are really good quarterbacks, need to win when it counts. For me, number 9, CJ Stroud. I also had Dak in fantasy, by the way, and he was awesome last year. I had him and CD. His best team of all time.
He put up numbers last year. That's for sure. He did.
Right. He was great. And these rankings for me are all based on current. I think this is my ranking of the current best quarterbacks in the league. And I'm trying to be as objective as possible, even though people will say 2 at 6 is crazy, being a homer and whatnot. CJ Stroud, I have at 9. You see it up on the screen. I think CJ Stroud had a great year last year. I think he's really good. I personally can't put him over any of the 8 quarterbacks that I said. Dak Prescott, since 2016, has shown that he's a good starting quarterback in the league. People have wondered or speculated for a long time, well, what's so special about Dak? Well, he's just a good quarterback. Like, he makes good throws when you need it. You've seen him win clutch games. Again, he has to go deep in the playoffs. That's the thing. CJ Stroud went and won a playoff game last year. Props to him. Joe Flacco threw 2 pick sixes. I would say that he had a little bit of help in winning that game from the other team. But he had a great year. They went 10-7. They snuck in the playoffs. They won the division in a bad division. I think the division got more competitive this year. I think the Texans got better this year. So let's see how CJ Stroud handles being the leader of that offense in year 2. Let's see if he can even improve and capitalize on the fact that his team got better in year 2. And we'll see if he goes up the rankings by just a few weeks from now when the season starts, or by the end of the season. And I'm sure he will. He's a very good quarterback. And I don't think anybody expected him to be as good or even be this much better than Bryce Young when they came into the league. And so CJ Stroud comes in at 9 for me. And then at 10, to round out my top 10, I don't know if this is going to be a surprise, but I have Jared Goff. I think you actually have a spot higher. For me, I have him at 10. He's a winning quarterback. He came into the league on a struggling Rams team. Sean McVay found him, brought him back to life, helped lead that Rams team to a Super Bowl. They ended up losing to Tom Brady, whatever. But since he's been in Detroit, that first season was rough. Year 2 just lit it up. Last year lit it up. I mean, Jared Goff has turned Detroit around. They made the playoffs, won a game. I mean, just spectacular football from them, especially on offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of my favorite players in the league right now. Sam Laporta was awesome last year, and they have the offensive line. Jared Goff just produces another one of those 4,000-yard passers, 35 touchdowns. And I truly believe that, the NFC North can be maybe the best division in football this year, just by how it's shaping out. And I think it depends on if the Vikings are going to be good, but I think regardless of how that division shapes out, I think Jared Goff leads that team again with a stellar offense to being the top of that division and making the playoffs. So I think these are my top 10 rankings of quarterback. We got Mahomes.
We had similar guys. Did we have all the same players except for one? I had Dak. I had Jordan Love. But all the other players were the same, moved around a little bit. So yeah, I think we're mostly on the same page. And was Tua a little high? Not maybe some people might think so, but I think we can argue for that just as well as other players could argue for them as well.
Right,
so
sure.
Yeah, so anyway, we're about a week out from the first preseason game. So I will have that to talk about soon, and then of course inching closer to the season. But yeah, I think we're up and running. Thank you to everybody that so far that has watched the podcast. We're just starting out, so we've got to creep up there with numbers and all that. But make sure you follow us on Twitter, Finn's Fan Podcast. Follow us on there and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Any last words, man?
No, I'm excited. Hopefully we get a sneak peek at training camp in a couple days, and we'll come back on and hopefully talk about that, and so we can see what everyone's been saying up close about this Dolphins team and get ready for the beginning of the season.
Yep, and shout out to DolphinsTalk.com for putting out this guy's article, and maybe there'll be some more of those to come soon as well. So have a great preseason, everybody. We'll see you later.